Miami Heat had a relatively quiet offseason, only acquired Norman Powell and Simone Fontecchio via some trades, but that left fans wondering, what is the plan for this Heat organization in the future? Well, ESPN may have revealed on a podcast what the Miami Heat front office could actually be up to. It came from the Hoop Collective podcast, which features Tim Bontemps, Brian Windhorst, and McMahon. And Bontemps from ESPN said that he believes the Heat are now waiting to see if they can get a player better than Bam Adebayo, specifically in 2027 free agency. He mentions that's when Giannis, Nikola Jokic, and Donovan Mitchell could all be free agents. I think the Heat are probably going to sit in that space. And my first reaction to hearing this and reading this quote is it's incredibly annoying. One, because I don't know if it is accurate or not in terms of that's what Miami wants to do. Let's just act as if it is. The Heat are constantly pushing their master plan down the line in hopes that a free agent superstar shakes free to where they would have cap space waiting to pounce. Problem is, that really never happens, and these players that have been mentioned, aka Donovan Mitchell, Giannis, and Jokic, well, they're probably not going to become available in free agency because an organization wouldn't let that type of player walk for nothing. They would trade him before free agency ultimately comes to the table. As we're going to talk more about this conversation and what's next for Miami, make sure you follow me over on X at Nick_Roloff is my handle. I'm talking Miami Heat basketball every day. And if the Heat make any moves or link to any players, we'll have you covered over there first. We're 97 followers away from 2,300. Follow me today. That's kind of where I want to first start here in terms of my reaction to that quote from Bontemps. I am sick and tired of waiting and waiting for future stars to become available on the free agent market. That is simply not how the NBA works in this day and age, especially with the new CBA. Now, maybe it could change in the next couple of years, but I highly doubt it. Now, Bontemps is on to something to the degree of names of free agents that could become available in 2027. It's a star-studded class. It was certainly better than this past year, and it's certainly better than the 2026 NBA free agency class that's projected next year. Steph Curry is an unrestricted free agent, but he's not leaving the Bay. He's also 39 years old when he hits free agency. But he mentioned Giannis, who's got a player option. Nikola Jokic has got a player option. Donovan Mitchell has a player option. So does Anthony Davis and Karl-Anthony Towns. Some of the main unrestricted free agents are Kawhi Leonard, Trae Young, and Zach LaVine. I put Brandon Ingram on the list as well, but certainly is a star-studded cast of potential free agents. Granted, half of them, a little bit more than half, would have to opt out of their player option. And I'll go back to this point one more time. Why are we going over this again? Now, I don't really think Bontemps has sources inside the Miami Heat organization. He is more or less speculating that this is what the Heat want to do. But these type of players do not hit NBA free agency. I'd be willing to bet a significant amount of money that Giannis, Donovan Mitchell, and Jokic are not free agents in 2027. I think Jokic either extends or retires. Giannis, if he is not a Milwaukee Buck, is likely going to request a trade. And Donovan Mitchell, if Cleveland continues to struggle over the next couple of seasons, would likely request a trade as well. And that's the point here. You want an NBA superstar? You got to make a trade. And the issue that Miami is continuously facing is that they don't have enough assets to make a trade. Why? Because they're trading all of their second-round picks to get away from players on their roster, a.k.a. When they made the trade with PJ Tucker and they traded a second-round pick to get rid of Dennis Schroeder in that three-team deal. They just did it with Haywood Highsmith. They also never have enough first-round draft capital to make a trade. They have the young players to make a deal, like a Ware, a Jovic, but they're always hesitant to include them in a package anyway. So we're just in a continuous loop of, hey, should the Heat trade for a star? Yeah, they probably should. They don't have enough assets to do so. They need to start asset collecting rather than unloading assets if they truly do want to hit on a star that becomes available with a trade request down the line. And this is why I have a hard time trusting the Heat front office. They do always put a competitive roster together. The problem is they never have a competitive enough roster to win it all, and they're always stuck in limbo. Pinned comment, do you trust the Heat front office? Type T for trust or type D for don't. I will say, there is some truth to what Bontemps had to say about the Heat potentially loading up to have a lot of cap space in 2027, whether it's for free agency or to make some trades. They have no commitments basically beyond this upcoming next 2 seasons. We've talked about how the Heat could have a max contract spot available in 2026 free agency. Well, this is also honed in for 2027. You look at the players that are currently on the Miami Heat roster that could be on this team in the 2027-28 season, which is that season after 2027 free agency. The only commitment that they really have is for Bam Adebayo, who is the pillar of this franchise at this point. You have Kel'el Ware in the last year of his rookie deal. Kasper Siakam is still on a rookie deal. Paul Larson and Jaime Jaquez Jr. are restricted free agents. And then the recently signed Drew Smith, who's on a 3-year contract, is under on $2.9 million as well. The point is, the Miami Heat don't have any commitments outside of Bam Adebayo. They have a ton of cap space, at least as of right now. Now, that could change based on a Nikola Jovic extension down the pipeline, a potential Tyler Hero extension. But right now, they have cap space to where they can offer 1, maybe even 2 max contracts in NBA free agency if players were available. But as I mentioned throughout the first half of today's show, it is very unlikely that 1 or 2 of those big-time superstars are actually available in the summer of 2027. And I'm going to take a look at what the Heat need to do and what needs to happen here in a second. But shout out to Prize Picks. Prize Picks is back, folks, and this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, and I'm so happy that they're back because with preseason football and college football here, don't miss any of the action. You can get in on the action with your favorite football players, whether it's Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Tua Tagovailoa. I won this past week in the preseason action between Miami and Detroit because it's so simple to play. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money today. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you could still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. Double your money even if one of your picks does not hit. And I'm already looking forward to the action in the first week of professional football. It's 2 weeks away. I got more than Dak Prescott. It's a free pick for the season opener, more than half a yard for the Cowboys QB. I'll pair that up with Joe Flacco, more than 218.5 passing yards, and more than with Patriots wide receiver Demario Douglas, 32.5 receiving yards. 3-player entry there to win 6 times your money. Like I said, you can customize to win up to 2,000 times your money. Join me and the millions of others on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. I've said this on a video in the past, and I'll say it again. If the Heat want to start contending in the East and in the NBA, they either need to make a trade for a superstar and not wait for free agency, or they need to have a crazy player development, whether it is one of their veterans take a step forward, aka a Hero or a Bam, into an all-star level player to an all-NBA level player, or they need to have one of their young guys that they've drafted over the last 5 years go from a solid rotational guy to an all-star level player. And when you look at the Heat roster, there are obviously some candidates from that young player development range that could elevate to all-star. Now, if you're talking about a veteran going to an all-NBA level, it would have to be Hero or Bam. Hero went from level role player and high production player to an all-star. Adebayo's been an all-star. Can he get to that all-NBA level? Would probably have to take a massive jump on the offensive end of the floor. But I think we all know who we're referring to in terms of the development that is needed. It is the 2 young guys that you've drafted over the last 4 years, Nikola Jovic and Kel'el Ware. I'm looking at you two. Those are the 2 players that if the Miami Heat want to go from middle of the pack play-in team to contender in the East and in the NBA Finals, those 2, both or at least one of them, need to become an all-star level player, so you have 3 all-star caliber guys with Hero, Bam, and one of these 2 with good rotation players surrounding them. And I'll talk about each player here, but make sure you are subscribed for daily Miami Heat coverage completely for free. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a video we put out because it is daily. It is free. There's no downside to subscribing. If you don't like what we're bringing to the table, you can unsubscribe a week later, but I'm going to be pretty sure you don't want to do that. We'll start by talking about Kel'el Ware because he did have a very successful rookie season after being drafted 15th overall out of Indiana. If you told me when the draft happened that Ware was going to start the entire second half of the season alongside Bam, I would have told you you're probably crazy. I thought that would have been a year 2 thing. But Ware showed the ability to defend at the rim, to rebound, and space the floor a little bit. Now, he was very inconsistent, as a rookie would be, and he needs to show better defensive awareness, defensive IQ, defensive positioning, as well as a better motor and aggressiveness on offense. But he certainly has the potential to be an all-star caliber center in the NBA. I don't think that is an exaggeration. When I see Kel'el Ware's raw talent, I see a guy that could potentially average 16 points, 10 boards, and 2.5 blocks a night. Am I projecting that? No, but that is certainly his potential. And if he's able to do that alongside Bam and Tyler, that is certainly an all-star level center. He needs to take that step for Miami if you want to see this team take the step forward. Now, another player is Nikola Jovic, who has certainly improved over the first 3 seasons of his career. Didn't really play at all his rookie season, spent most of that year in the G League. Next year starts in the G League, then gets called up because Jimmy Butler wants him on the main roster, gets hurt, but plays in 46 games, showed a ton of flashes, averaging 7 points, shooting 40% from 3. That is obviously expected to take a larger role this upcoming season, but then gets hurt a bunch as well. Could never find his stride in the starting rotation, gets moved to the bench where he played very well, but then hurts his wrist and misses pretty much the end of the year and only plays in 46 games. Now, the raw numbers weren't bad, but the problem is he's only played in 46 games in each of the last 2 seasons. So even though he's entering his 4th year, he has not played a lot in the NBA. He hasn't even played 110 games in the NBA to this point in terms of an actual rotation player. Now, the reports are that the Miami Heat coaching staff and front office is very high on Nikola Jovic long term, and you can see why. You simply do not find many players that are 6'10", that have the shooting, the feel, the IQ, and the playmaking ability that Nikola Jovic has. If he's able to stay healthy and continue to add to his consistency from beyond the arc and on the offensive end, well, you watch his playmaking and offensive versatility, and you're like, yeah, this guy can maybe not become an all-star, but be in that Derek White tier. Not defensively, but a high-level role player that is just underneath an all-star caliber guy, but is critical to your team's success. That is certainly where Nikola Jovic could go and become not the same type of player, but in that same type of mold. So if you had to pick a player that has the higher ceiling for the Miami Heat, who would it be? Type NJ for Nikola Jovic, type KW for Kel'el Ware. Rounding out the show with this, I think there is actually a world where Nikola Jovic starts ahead of Kel'el Ware. And I know that might take some people by surprise here, but it actually may fit the Heat roster better. We have consistently talked about how Miami does not have a true backup center to Kel'el Ware. I've wanted Bam to switch to the 4 and lose some weight and become a wing. I think he's gained weight in a good way. It's not like he's getting fat. It's like he's getting more buff and he's just added more muscle to where it's limited his quickness and athleticism ever so slightly. Because if you remember watching him at his first couple years in the league, he was so quick, so vertically gifted, just isn't on that same tier as he was, but that naturally happens with age anyway. The point is, if you wanted him to become a 4/wing more consistently, you need Ware and another player to be your centers. But you don't have one. So maybe the plan is to start Bam at center, Jovic at the 4, Wiggins at the 3. You add another shooter, you add another playmaker to help Tyler Hero, who is projected to be your lead ball handler, and then you have Kel'el Ware come off the bench and be your center. I don't know what the Heat starting lineup is going to be, but I am just labeling this as a possibility. Do I think it's still likely your starting lineup is Hero, Powell, Wiggins, Bam, and Ware, with Jovic and Mitchell being your sixth and seventh man? Yes, I do think that's more likely, but it is possible where Jovic starts at the 4 due to his size and playmaking ability, and Ware comes off the bench and still gives you 25, 30 minutes a night, but just they stagger Jovic, Bam, and Ware, but start with the Jovic, Bam front court duo. That'll do it for this episode of the Heat Report. Appreciate everybody for watching today's show. If you are still watching and you haven't followed me on Twitter, you're missing out, folks. Daily Heat content outside of our YouTube videos over there, so go give me a follow right now.